Okay, Monday morning, February 28th. I just decided to come down to the parking garage, our bomb shelter, in the apartment building. This is kind of where everyone goes when there's air raid sirens. So right now there was only one short siren last night, and I think that was because something was coming in our direction, but it really wasn't. It was going somewhere else. It was probably an aircraft. I don't know if there was any strikes last night or not. But here's some better light. I guess I have to keep walking around to keep the lights on. So, yeah, it was another day we went unscathed, but the stress is mounting. There's this Belarus factor. The Putin's brother Lukashenko is not distancing himself. He's doing quite the opposite. So it's like Mussolini and Hitler, I suppose. They were in it all the way to the end. So the Belarus factor really, it does increase the stress level. So to my friend John, I was talking to yesterday, I think you're doing the right thing to get out. For your situation and circumstances, I think it's a good decision. You'd be a good fundraiser. From abroad, to raise funds to fuel the efforts here. So to keep sane, I guess I'm getting ready to go to the gym. I hope the gym has opened up. It was open a few days ago, and I think it was closed for the weekend. But we need these things open so we can get our mind off things and, think rationally and sequentially and logically so we can get through this situation, because obviously there's a big psychological warfare element when you incapacitate people with depression or anxiety. It just makes it that much easier to take over and control them. So you have to keep your routines, and especially you got to keep physically fit. It's paramount importance, to do some physical activity every day, without the phone, without any electronics, just to take in what's around you, nature and everything. Without the headsets and listening to music, it really clears your mind. So I went into town yesterday, and I saw some guys making Molotov cocktails. I had a chat with them. Had a few ideas of my own and everything. But the reality is these Molotov cocktails, which are made out of kerosene, tar, and I think some kind of alcoholic drink, some vodka or something is in there. Mostly it's, I think, kerosene and tar, though. It's highly flammable stuff. I think the reality of Molotov cocktails, they worked in 1939 in the Finnish-Russian War when tanks were just tin cans with tracks. But now all the ventilation systems and everything are, I think, secured, and maybe even the tank engines are designed to take a flame out, or two. So anyone who's making these cocktails and everything, I think you should look into it, but I think they're more useful now for diversionary tactics, to draw attention, have the guy look here so you can do a maneuver, do a move, or do an ambush or something. It's a diversionary tool versus an actual tactical tool these days. Sure, you can probably hit one standing soldier, but you'd have to be close, and you'd have to be a good shot, and you'd have to hope the glass bottle breaks when it impacts, so I think they need a little bit more. I think they need a little bit more than Molotov cocktails. They need the modern equivalent, I don't want to get into any suggestions, but you can read between the lines. They need something more modern, more useful. Look to Iraq for some references, because reality is starting to set in. I mean, these things give hope and optimism, but the reality is, the Russians have formidable weapons. They do have, even though their technology is outdated by American standards, it's still pretty good by standards here in this reality. I also met a friend of mine in town. He gave me some chili. He's an American guy that's staying behind as well, interesting friend of mine. He doesn't want his name mentioned, but he's a hell of a cook. So he made me some vegetarian chili, which I'll try out today. I'd like to thank him for that. And then I went to into one of the bars we go to. It's called Beer Culture, just to talk. But I'm getting a little tired of all this talking. There's a lot of foreigners there just talking. We got to get more action-oriented and do something. This is not the time to talk. I mean, democracy is under fire. This is not a TV show. So we all have to do our little part. We all have to do something, to help out the overall effort, or this will be lost forever. Or forever in our lifetimes. Probably in 20 years, Russia will crack from, swallowing too much if they end up succeeding with this. And just like the Soviet Union just fell apart. But it took a long time, and this new Soviet Union, would rise and fall. But who wants to wait that long? It's better to cut this thing off at the head right now, and we all can do our part. We all can do something. Even if, like I said, it's just working and paying the taxes. You can make a donation if, you're abroad. You can, but it's really tough with the organizations. There's one organization I was looking at to donate money, and I actually did donate 300 euros to them. But then I looked on their Bitcoin address, and they're sitting on $5 million. It's just sitting. It's not the money. So you have to find organizations where things go out the same day they come in, because things are happening now. Things are going on now. And a friend of mine from Sweden said, if I can find an organization that can do things fast and has a plan and low overheads, low administrative overheads, so that all the money is going where it's supposed to go, he would like to work with them. So drop me a message or contact me if you know such an organization here in the Lviv area that can make a direct impact, within 48 hours of receiving funds. That would be good. Something to do with transportation, supporting the refugee situation, something like that. Something that's happening in the Lviv area that we can monitor and make sure it's being used in the right way. These lights are a bit cuckoo down here. I can understand hiding down here for air raids and you could lose your shit. In the big picture, there looks like any time now, the Ukrainians and the Russians will be talking, supposed to. These talks have been canceled the other day. To be honest, this is not really what I expected. I actually thought Putin was smarter than this. Maybe you guys don't want to hear this, but I just trying to give some objective analysis here about my thoughts about Putin. I thought he was playing a long-term chess game on the economic and political front, that he would do this tension, rise up the oil prices, rise up the energy prices, put Europe into a crisis and set them against each other, on the energy policy. Do they bite the bullet and make these long-term investments to get off the Russian gas, or do they keep accepting the cheap gas so they can be comfortable? And different countries have different temperaments, different countries have different situations about this. So I thought he was actually doing a good job. I thought dividing Europe, he was doing quite a good job actually, putting Europe against each other. The NATO was weakened. Europe's levels of commitments were different, and he could have rigged an elections, province by province here in Ukraine, town by town, with Europe divided. He could have come in here in an unbloody way over the next 10, 20 years, and then you could, that's what I was expecting, that this was his strategy, just to stay behind the line and create tension and rise up the oil price to fill up his treasury, fill up his war chest for the future, for buying elections and playing these political games. I thought he was more of that kind of guy. I didn't know he was, this is just a confession, I didn't know he was this crazy. He's committing economic suicide. Usually war is used to bolster your economy and achieve some economic objective. And yes, if he captures East Ukraine, he controls 30% of the world's grain. But we have technology. We can eat other things than grain. There's other ways to eat food, and that technology would get boosted. We're eating crickets now, which are huge and high in protein. Our chimpanzee ancestors eat crickets, and they're pretty strong and they're pretty smart for animals. So there are ways, around it. So it just doesn't make sense, because it's like he's going to now Russia becomes like North Korea. They were actually becoming a formidable economic power. If they would have just kept these oil prices up and kept running, they would have built up a war chest. They were having the Grand Prix races there. They had the Olympics. So they were like a mainstream North Korea, but now they're like North Korea. They're just like a belligerent state, belligerent state run by a strongman. Really, really unexpected. So it makes everything else unexpected. And this like puppet guy, Lukashenko, is, I thought he could be severed. I thought he could be broken from Russia, because they're a small country. They're right on Europe's border. They could be incentivized to side more with Europe and to stay out like Kazakhstan did. This will not be forgotten. I mean, now he's crossed a bridge, he can't come back. He's burned a bridge, literally. And this will not be forgotten. And whole policy and elections now will be on how do we get off this Russian energy? How do we get off on this Russian dependence, instead of voting green or, making all the bathrooms gender neutral. This stuff is all off the table. Green energy, all of this stuff. It's just now Western energy. It doesn't matter where it comes from, and green energy will just have to wait. That's what he's done. He's now, I'm pretty sure the next election in the US, this is going to be a topic. The next elections in Europe, this is going to be a topic. Turn back on the nuclear plants. Fuck the windmills, excuse my language. But they can only do 10%. Windmills only give us 10% of the energy. Anyway, I don't want to go on this energy rant. I already did that, but everyone knows my feelings. I have a bachelor's degree in nuclear engineering. We need nuclear power plants all over the place and fast, to first secure our independence, and then we can figure out how to be green, because there won't be anything to be green if this keeps going on. So, yeah, just some thoughts. I really thought we were living in a 21st century and people had access to information, access to education, and this thuggery was, behind us, and it was a more skilled. The battlefield has now become a more political and economic one, just becoming more like that, more intellectual, one would say, to use policies and rig elections and things like that. But no, this is going to set Russia back like 200 years. There is going to be a backlash. And even the Chinese, I think, are not entirely comfortable with this. Now on some other news here, there has been some postings, and even my neighbor just told me 10 minutes ago, the French Foreign Legion, the Ukrainians in the French Foreign Legion, not the French Foreign Legion itself, but there's Ukrainians serving in the French Foreign Legion, are coming home to fight. I hope they find themselves as officers and trainers in the Ukrainian military versus just tactical fighters. Their expertise is needed to boost up just like Steuben, Baron von Steuben came from Prussia. He was a Prussian general and trained George Washington's army, created the training manual. That's what these guys are going to be needed to do, create some, of course they're going to probably have to fight, but they're going to be more needed to up the Ukrainian military culture, up the Ukrainian army preparedness and readiness, so hopefully they find the role there. Special forces guys and, elite infantry like the French Foreign Legion, they're more like Army Rangers than I would say special forces. They're like an elite infantry unit. They will be pretty naked without air cover, so I hope that they get the Stingers and, their hands, because these guys will know how to use them, and get the Javelin rockets and everything into their hands right away, because we really need these guys. But this is good news. This will really boost morale, and whatever units these guys are in, the morale will go way up, and that can make a difference. But Europe has got to get us the weapons. Europe has got to get the weapons here. I'm reading a lot of chatter and hearing a lot of stuff that they're hesitating because the airspace is closed. But how is that possible? Military aircraft can come and go anywhere. They can land on fields, airstrips, especially C-17, C-130s. They can parachute the stuff out the back. They can get it in here. Still this west side of Ukraine, it's still still all clear, and it can get to Kiev within a day, and get into the right hands within a day or two. So they need to get those weapons here now. I don't know why Europe goes through all this committee and stuff, and all these approvals. They should just see this as a war and just like COVID. They didn't hesitate to use emergency powers or stopping the trucking strike in Canada. They didn't hesitate to use emergency powers. They need to use emergency powers for this. This is a test of democracy, and although Ukraine is not in the NATO alliance, letting Russia do this just sets a bad example and will create the tension. So I know we cannot, as Americans or Europeans cannot fight the Russians directly, but through indirect, like we did in Afghanistan, they have a pretty good chance. If the Ukrainians can get rid of the helicopters, and they can use the javelins on the tanks. There's been some pretty impressive videos of that, and they keep doing that. That'll break, and then they can do a new psychological warfare. A lot of these Russian soldiers have their cell phones with them. I mean, their Tinder profiles are showing up in Kharkiv. If we can reach them and tell them they surrender and get paid, or they surrender and they get asylum in Europe, and they can get a new life, they can go to Portugal, and they can go to college, and they can do a useful trade. Hopefully that can break the unit cohesion and create mutinies within their ranks. I mean, this is the only way this war is going to be won, is we have to go outside the box, because it cannot be won, head on, like an NFL game, two sides opposing each other. We got to come up with some creative tactics here. So, yes, yeah, this is the real test of democracy, and I'll tell you, I'm a bit nervous more now with this Belarus alliance, because I'm just surprised the West hasn't been able to crack that, to kind of get between Belarus and Russia somehow, find some motivation. That if the map is redrawn and we go back into a Cold War, it's going to be a mess. That's all I can say. Standard of living, from a superficial point of view, the standard of living and lives of everybody in the Western countries is going to go down for a while, and there's going to be a lot of hate and discontent and everything. We were really on a good track till this happened. And like I said, just surprising me, because this is like the end. Ultimately, I will say this, the West will come out of this. The West will, but it might take 10 years, and ultimately, Russia will collapse under its own weight, with everyone cutting them off, because this is going to be the topic of elections. And it'll take 10, 20 years to come out of this, but that's a long time. That is just a long time to wait, for Soviet Union Part 2 to collapse, and then everything gets rebuilt, and then who knows, Putin too gets in power 20, 30 years from now, and we do it all over again. So I think it's time we just have to put a stop to this nonsense, because that's what it is. Well, that's all I got today. Hope you enjoyed the tour of the bomb shelter / garage. Thank you, and have a good day.